Since you went away, I think about you all through the day, my buddy, my buddy. Nobody quite so true. Miss your voice, touch of your hand, long to know that you understand, my buddy. My buddy.
We emerge from a tragic history of being governed by people who had no consideration for human rights and who judged an entire nation only on the color of their skin.
Born in Kimberley on June 17, 1937, James Wilfred Wentwoth, or Buddy as he is affectionately known, was destined to be an icon of hope long before he knew it.
Besides the personal life, he was involved in the South African League of Teachers, which was essentially a coloured teachers union. And prior to that, before he qualified as a teacher, he was also a student activist to some degree. Not too sure in what formation that existed, but I know he was very active as a in the South African Teachers League. And at the time, I mean, you know, once you, especially if you're articulate, you end up on a list somewhere. So his movements became more curtailed, and I think as a result, I also have a sister who's my age, from a different mother. So there was that personal aspect to his leaving, I think, but there was also a more dominant political side, which brought him to Namibia. And I was saying recently that where my brother and sister and I, we lost a father because of politics, and then my younger siblings gained a father because of politics. So yeah, you know, there was always a consciousness, and that consciousness played itself out in his hunger for knowledge, his wanting to be an educator and not just a teacher.
His desire to see the total liberation of education from the inferior Bantu education for the majority caused that Buddy Wentwoth end up in Wentwoth, Namibia, in the late 60s at the wake of the liberation struggle against the old South African regime. Coming from a strong political background in South Africa, part of the Progressive Teachers League in Cape Town, Buddy Wentwoth quickly became involved in campaigns to achieve equity in the education sector. His presence was immediately felt in the Namibian Education Association for Coloured People in Wentwoth as an advisor. This organization later merged with other segregated teachers organizations to form the Namibia National Teachers Union, NANTU, an influential body in the liberation of Namibia from apartheid.
Buddy Wentwoth comes from a background, a teaching background, where apartheid was prevalent. And by coming to Namibia from South Africa, where apartheid was, especially in the education sector also, was notorious, and he fought against, in a gentleman-like way, against the notorious securities, against this regime. He came to Namibia to live out this dream of his to liberate education also in Namibia from the apartheid and devilish system.
His teaching career started at Dr. Lema High School. Here he taught English before moving on to Wentwoth High School after it was upgraded to a secondary school from a junior secondary school. Wentwoth continued to teach English as a second language before eventually becoming headmaster from 1981 till 1984.
Buddy was an educator par excellence. Buddy was that one would call the epitome of the old-fashioned teacher. One who really believed, solemnly believed, adamantly believed in the establishment of sound moral and ethical values as a forerunner to academic and or professional achievements. He was a no-nonsense teacher, by and large, but a very, very equitable teacher. Now, this is the classroom in which Buddy Wentwoth taught back in the 80s. He was responsible for the teaching of English as a second language to the then standard 9 and 10s, which later on became grade 11 and 12. Room number 27. That was Buddy Wentwoth's classroom. In here, the students, the ex-students of Mr. Wentwoth would tell you that they had the fondest of moments with him. He was very meticulous, particularly about the command of concord, the I ams and the he hases, etc., etc. And should you dare not coming right with your command of concord, then you had been tongue-lashed like only Buddy Wentwoth could do.
He was a loving, a caring, and very comfortable teacher. He showed always empathy towards the learners at Wentwoth High School. Hy wou altyd vir ons gehelp het, en veral in Engels. Wou hy vir ons gehelp het, ons standaard gelig het. Never mind. Hoe het ons altyd reg gehelp. En hy was vreeslik altyd gesteld op how you use is, are, was and were.
Yes.
So if you have to write a composition or a paragraph, and in the first sentence, your is or your are wasn't correct, then you get a note for that paragraph. And don't worry to mark further. So hy was baie streng. Want hy wou gehad het die Wentwoth gemeenskap se kinders met Engels kon gepraat het.
I can remember Buddy as a teacher that really disliked unfairness. I've no recollection of him having had blue-eyed boys. To him, every learner was special, irrespective of color or creed or origin or what have you. So Buddy was just that likable teacher, very stern, very strict, and as I said, he did not believe in no as answers.
Wentwoth understood the unfolding political situation at home. He wanted his students to have a better worldview and challenge them not to be comfortable with the status quo.
I can remember back in the 80s, Buddy believed that learners, particularly our learners, that had been deprived of many things in life because of the policies of the day. And Buddy believed that learners' horizons got to be broadened. And he was the very first man, very first teacher that organized a tour, an educational tour for learners to our neighboring country, South Africa.
It was very, very educational and very nice.
Where did you guys go to?
We go to
Different countries.
Yes.
Swaziland,
Johannesburg,
South Africa,
yes,
Lesotho.
Lesotho, yes, Botswana.
And in that time it was, I don't know the name now, Tabanshu.
Tabanshu, yes, Tabanshu, yes. Okay, ek wil net daar aansluit, maar ek sal dit nou in Afrikaans sê. Toe ons in Botswana kom, was dit gewees die jaar wat al die Afrika staatshoofde, behalwe mos nou Namibië wat nog nie onafhanklik was nie, het by mekaar gekom in Botswana. En dit was vir ons verskriklik interessant en goed dat ons dit kon bygewoon het, want ons het gesien hoe elke staatshof kom afklim en soos president Kenneth Kaunda met sy wit sakdoek gewaai het. Dit was net amazing, want ons in Namibië het op daai stadium,
Nie sulke goed geken nie.
toe was ons nog Suidwes-Afrika, het ons nog nie daai goedjies geken nie.
Another major preoccupation, even though he was an English teacher, was athletics. Wentworth believed in a well-rounded individual, and the balance between academics and sport was paramount.
Buddy believed that athletics isn't athletics unless people enjoy themselves there, despite them maybe not winning the race or what have you. He was a go-getter. And should there be nobody that would avail himself voluntarily, you know, to contribute to, for instance, coaching of sporting teams, Buddy would have stepped in and Buddy would have taken over. So much so that Buddy Wentwoth was even one of the coaches of the drum majorates at school. He was the drum major at the school. He even came up with the idea, just, you know, to be funny, because that is a very big part of his character. He came up with what he called the dom poppies, and he made use of the boys to do that, you know, just to add flavor to the event. Buddy was those guys that had such a wonderful impact, a wonderful influence on the achievements of the learners in track and field at the athletics venue, that many of those learners, I believed, wanted to show off, wanted to show Buddy Wentwoth that they are indeed winners.
My buddy.
A friend to many, Buddy Wentworth was never short of lessons learnt and lessons taught. His methodology of teaching everyone who crossed his path knew no boundaries.
My father had a way about him, you know. I remember if I used to ask him for advice or something, you know, he wouldn't give me the advice that moment, you know. He wouldn't reply that exact time. He would consider it, you know. He'd write down points and he'd think about it and he'd come back to me the next day, you know. He had that considered approach towards me and life, I believe, you know. Method, you know, methodology. You think about something before you do it, you know. Consider all sides of the story, you know, positives, the negatives, you know, your attacker and you as the attackee, you know, type of thing, you know. That for me is something that I'll never forget.
Uncle Buddy was that type of person whereby it's not about telling you to do something, it's about showing you that you can do it. And that's one of the lessons that I took from Uncle Buddy was, you know, anybody can tell you how to do something, but once you learn how to do it for yourself, it's something that you will always know how to do.
I didn't spend that kind of blocks of time with him to really experience the man. And as I was saying, for a lot of my youth, I had issues with my father, and it was only until I grew up or matured that I put that to rest, and it gave me the opportunity to engage with this man. So he may have been, in my opinion, a bad father in my life, but he was a brilliant man. But it took me many years to reach that point, and that was self-discovery. And once that happened, we could sit down and have discussions and respect each other as individuals, more than me, the kid that gave him grey hairs in the past, or him, you know, you get rid of all the baggage and then you can engage on a different level.
To his children, their friends, and his friends, Buddy Wentwoth was a rod of knowledge, a man with sound morals. At home or in professional life, he showed the sunny side of his personality.
He would always have lots of people at home, entertain. People would just drop in and they would be served food. He would never allow anybody to leave his house without having been, fed.
Going to the Wentwoth household was always great fun. No one ever said we don't want to go to the Wentwoths. We jumped at the opportunity to go there. It was always a very lively household. They were a family of 6 living in that house, but very seldom was there just a family of 6. There was always an aunt visiting. The late Auntie Miriam had many sisters, and there was always somebody visiting, or one of the kids' other older brothers and sisters from South Africa were visiting with their spouses and their kids. So it was always just a very, very busy, lively house, lots of aunts and uncles and other brothers and sisters. And yes, Auntie Miriam and Uncle Buddy never said, no, your friends can't come over, there are too many people here already. For Uncle Buddy, the more the merrier. And the minute you stepped into his house, you weren't his daughter's friends. You were one of the family. And the rules were the same for you visiting as they were for his own children.
My father had, for the girls, he had an application form for men who wanted to date. And the application form had, various things, but questions like, which form of torture do you prefer? If you had to be shot, which part of your body would you like to be shot in? If you moved outside my house, you better be working for FedEx or something. There was a whole thing, and what does the word no mean to you? What does abstinence mean to you? It was a whole form that suitors had to fill in, and in the end it says processing might take 2 to 5 years. But he was in jest like that, but always very protective, but my father is very much about you have to make your own choices.
I know of that application that Aisha speaks. We've all seen that application, and because we were the older girls, I think we got to see that application way before Aisha did. It was on the dining room table.
He had such a problem with me in high school and university, because I dated one girl throughout the whole of high school and one girl all university. And he used to always say, like, to people, he doesn't understand what's wrong with his son. Why must he choose one girl? Because he was a proper player, but he was a player.
As the years passed on, Buddy Wentwoth never stopped educating himself about the world and its politics. He spent much time debating the political stance of his country of birth, as well as the nostalgic effect of the English classics and sports with his friends.
He was an avid reader. Him and my husband would exchange books. He would read the classics, Shakespeare, the Brontes, Joseph Conrad, but he would also go for, he was not a snob as far as reading is concerned. Detective novels and romance he would read, and then he loved poetry. He was especially fond of T.S. Eliot. And then also political novels, political literature. And that is where my husband and he, they would have endless arguments about Chomsky and Lenin and Marx and, you know, that sort of thing. And of course, the Palestinian question. They would watch Al Jazeera and phone each other and say, have you read this? Have you seen this? And the Palestinian question was very near to his heart because of the injustice. He was a very good bridge player. I think the best in the country, definitely, and one of the best in South Africa.
As vast as his thirst for knowledge, so was his love for music.
Realizing my father's love for music was an eye-opener for me because it's just something I grew up with. At the time that he was a teenager in Cape Town, there was also a huge a trend of jazz lovers. So you had people like Gary Hendrickse and his band growing up. Jimmy Adams was a major saxophone player. Tony Schilder, who my father loved for many years, and whenever he came down to Cape Town, he used to try and get me to take him to see Tony Schilder if he was playing somewhere. Loved listening to Tony Schilder, great piano player, and a host of others. So the love that I had for music, I could see in him, because growing up for me, those were also the little influences. And it wasn't just in one particular genre, because even for me, looking at a jazz musician like Abdullah Ibrahim, when Abdullah Ibrahim started, and my father and Abdullah are probably contemporaries, so it would have been easy for my father to go to the Woodstock Town Hall and listen to Jimmy Adams' band playing Langarm, and Abdullah Ibrahim is playing in a Langarm band with Jimmy Adams, you know. But then on the Saturday afternoon, very easily you could have gone to one of the other clubs, and there was Abdullah Ibrahim playing the heavy jazz. So it's that type of influences that you can see where my father's love for music comes from. When we got to share this love is on his visits here, because one of the activities I used to love doing is there was a Monday night jam session in Cape Town where you'd find the youngsters getting together with some of the legends at the time, the professionals, and there was always something interesting happening on the night. So he would come there and he used to be very proud of what I was doing, because part of my activity at these jam sessions was to coordinate the music that's happening, introduce some of the youngsters to the stage, and some of those youngsters, and Buddy has seen this, have grown into becoming quite professional musicians who have made a career for themselves. And I used to love going with him to these things. He used to sort of beam with pride when he saw me and I come on stage, and he'd listen to the youngster for a little bit. He says, "Oh man, only in Cape Town. This is why I miss Cape Town." But you can sense that pride. You could sense that even though he was in Namibia, he still had the sense of pride of what was happening in Cape Town, seeing that music happening. And one of his sons is sort of involved in coordinating this. So I think he saw that side of him in me, and it used to make him proud. And he used to just laugh, say, "My son, you were born to do this. You're making a difference, like me."
For Buddy Wentwoth was a prankster, a practical joker. I remember vividly that one of the Afrikaans artists of the day in South Africa wanted to stage a show here in Wentwoth. And he phoned the school, and obviously because the school bears the name of the town, he was of the opinion that Wentwoth High School is just the appropriate school to make contact with in order to organize the show. And I can remember that that guy phoned Buddy Wentwoth, and they negotiate about the modalities pertaining to the show. And Buddy said that, you know what, sir, the Rehoboth community is such a small community, and I'm just afraid that you be very much discouraged, very much disappointed with what you might collect at the door. So, but since you've got a very big fan base in Rehoboth, I want to make a proposal to you. Why don't you consider selling the show to us? And they obviously negotiated about the amount of money. They're about to, you know, sell the show to Rehoboth High School, and Buddy came up with 3,000 rand. And he said, and you know what, sir? That money is guaranteed money. I don't think that you will ever get 3,000 rand at the door to pocket. And the guy said, fine, let's go for it. The rest is history. That evening, the Hermanus van Wyk Memorial Hall, the City Hall in Rehoboth, was filled to capacity. It was jam-packed with even people standing outside, wanted to come in, but there was no space, not for the proverbial mouse in the hall. And afterwards, this guy was very, very disappointed. And he told me at the after party, you know what? This guy, your deputy principal, he is what they call a confidence trickster.
My buddy.
Buddy Wentwoth met and married Miriam in 1973. She bore him 3 daughters and 1 son. Miriam died in 1997 after a long battle with cancer. Her death sparked a different spark in Buddy's continual involvement with children, as he embarked on becoming a voice of hope for children with cancer through the Cancer Association of Namibia. His knowledge and experience in working with children and their parents helped spur many projects for the children of 8 West Cancer Ward at the Wentwoth Central Hospital.
You see, these nursery rhymes, especially the bottom ones, are old, are very famous nursery rhymes. But we didn't want their faces to be white, so we wanted our community faces to be here. And this is where the late Mr. Buddy Wentwoth assisted us. First of all, to persuade the ministry that we can paint on their property, and then later on to get the thing on the go.
Okay, I'm Sister Hendricks, Lucia Hendricks. I'm working now here in this ward for almost 21 years. So, Mr. Buddy Wentwoth used to come always here to our ward since 2008. He started to come, it was in December 2008 when he started to come here. So for the first time when he came here, he was giving them a sort of a Christmas party, because it was in December when he comes here. So from there on, every week on Wednesdays, he used to come with a suitcase. The kids even knows him. If they saw him there in the corridor, they used to say, Uncle Buddy, and run to him. And he used to sit on that bench, is where he was always sitting, with his suitcase, and then the kids will just come to him, sit around him, and then he will dish out. He was saving always parcels for them. It was including a fruit, sweets, and chips, and biscuit also, was included in that parcel. So he gave each and every one. He was sending out to each and everyone a parcel. They will remember him as a friendly man, as their uncle. Like they come up with the name Uncle Buddy. I don't know how they have come up with that name. They will remember him as their uncle, the one who used to come always to them. And they